Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantira Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantira Pashantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhinas Santu, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Sarvastaratu Durgani, Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu, Sarva Sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarva Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Asatoma Satkamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So we have come practically to the end of the chapter 4. The chapter begins, as we saw, with the introducing the idea, if you like, or the truth, or the reality, or the perception of the avatar, of what does it mean of the descent of the divine. And that was the early 2 verses we saw in this chapter, which says that periodically we have seen in history some extraordinary beings appear from time to time, and they often seem to appear when there seems to be some kind of a decline in society. And these great beings then come to rejuvenate, to inject more power so that some kind of a balance is restored between this eternal struggle, so to speak, between the good and evil. And then Krishna goes on to show how work is an integral part of everyone's life. It's not only an integral part of our life, it is something which also divides our life between work and rest, because clearly work, any kind of activity at some point is going to exhaust us. And if it exhausts us, then we are going to need rest. At the same time, after rest, we need to work again. So our life then does get divided between periods of work and periods of rest. Most often we just call them weekends and working days. This division of our lives between work and rest does not give us complete satisfaction either in the work that we do or either in the rest that we get. So is there some way we can combine these two? Is there some way where we can be working all the time and also resting all the time? And then Krishna showed through various examples that the way to do it is through yoga, of doing work as worship. And the word that was used more often in this chapter was yajna. And among the various kinds of yajna or worship that were described, Krishna points out that the highest or the greatest or the most effective in all ways is the worship of or the cultivation of awareness that everything is filled with the divine. That was verse number 24. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi, the words that we often chant before meal. The idea is that everything is filled with the divine. Then we came to the concluding section, where Krishna points out, if you look at verses from 33, 34 onwards, showing the glory of that knowledge that frees us from this division between work and rest. And the way he says, as he points out in verse 34, is acquire that through prostration, inquiry, and service. So we need to take the guidance of those who have trodden on this path before and get their guidance. And then Krishna points out, which we saw last week, that once having acquired that knowledge, then we will no more be deluded, that we will be free from this binding power of karma. How does that freedom occur? It occurs through the power of knowledge burning off karma the way fire burns off fuel. And we saw last time what this burning of karma means. As long as karma remains, we may have the illusion of freedom, but we are not really free. And actually, we don't need to get too philosophical to understand this. A lot of time we will see, sometimes it's quite obvious that we are almost being pushed into activity. It's not that we enjoy all the time the work that we do. A lot of times, in fact, we just have to do it because we have to do it. Whether you like it or not, you need to get up in the morning and go to work. Some days you may not feel like doing so, but you've got to do it, and so on. So a lot of times our duties, our responsibilities push us forward. Given a choice, we probably may not do a lot of things that we are forced to do, either due to our duty, responsibility, or expectations of the people around us, or our own expectations from ourselves. So it is these, the expectations, our ambitions, our hopes, and the duties and responsibilities, which are kind of either a pushing or a pulling force in our lives. And therefore, the idea that we are free is almost an illusion. The only freedom will come when we are not pushed into activity by anything. There is no motive behind the work that we do. There will be completely motiveless action. The reason we are not able to stop from working and expecting the results of work is, of course, the sense of I that we have. And the knowledge burning of that karma really means it's the knowledge of the I. My present knowledge of the I is this: for all of us sitting here, I'm a human being. And these are the things I've got to do. That's our knowledge of ourselves. We know that this knowledge of ourselves has brought a lot of joy and fulfillment in our lives, no denying that. But alongside all the joy and happiness it has brought us, it has also brought us a lot of anxiety, a lot of worries, a lot of pain also. So if we hold on to our present knowledge of who we are, then this status quo will be maintained. Nothing is going to change. Life is going to continue the way it is going on now. Now, what Krishna is saying is, if you are completely satisfied with the way life is going now, nothing needs to be done. You don't need to do anything. In fact, you don't even need to study the Gita. On the other hand, if we feel, no, life is not going too badly, it's okay, but if possible, I would like it to go better. If we would like our present life situation to improve in some way, then there are two ways to do it. One way is then, let me go and try to improve the world, which is a good motivation. And a lot of people are doing that. But through experience and through reflection, we often recognize that improving things outside, even when we are able to do it to some extent, it's always temporary. There's nothing you can change permanently outside, because everything is temporary anyway. That was one of the cardinal truths that the Buddha especially emphasized, that everything is transitory. So all the improvements that we do, all the reforms that we do are transitory. No matter how good a highway system you build, that will need fixing from time to time, as we see, or the bridges that we build. So good, these are important things, but nothing is permanent. They all need fixing. Moreover, our ability to change outside is directly related to our ability to change ourselves. Some of these things like building roads and building bridges, surely we can do it, but as we have seen, that also needs periodic fixing. But what about more subtle things? As changing the world is not simply about buildings, it's also about bringing peace, bringing contentment, bringing joy. Now, how do we do that? One thing is certain, if I do not have peace in my own heart, I cannot really bring peace in the world. If there is no love in my heart, then I cannot simply, it's not simply just going, oh, love each other, be unselfish. That just doesn't work. And therefore, a more effective way of bringing about change is bringing the change here. That if I change here, then the outer change will become easier or manageable, or may not even be necessary. For instance, there is a story we had learnt in childhood that there was a king and he developed, he was, sometimes, especially in olden days, at least in stories, the king suddenly got some very weird ideas. So here was this king, and he said, oh, there is a lot of dust in our kingdom. And every time I go horse riding, all the dust kind of comes up, and we need to do something about it. And then suddenly he said, well, what we can do is, he called all the carpenters and all the people working in his kingdom, and then they all gave different suggestions. And someone said, the tailors and everyone said, why not just spread a cloth all over the kingdom so that all the dust will remain hidden under it? And of course, carpenter said, no, just we'll have wooden platforms everywhere, and so on. Depending on their specialty, everyone had a suggestion about covering the entire kingdom. And then someone came with this idea. Instead of doing that, why don't we just cover our feet? Then we are not affected by the dust. So it's a childhood story, but it kind of gives us the idea that if I want to see the world peaceful and joyful, the right place to start is with ourselves. I must become peaceful myself. I must become joyful myself. I must have that love in my own heart. Because if I have all these things, then there is some hope, some chance that I'll be able to make someone else happy, someone else peaceful. Because if I cannot experience that calm in my own heart, how can I bring any calm to anybody else? And therefore, this problem of work and improving has to begin also with ourselves. So it's not about changing the world, it's first about changing myself. And what is it about myself that we can or should change? Well, many of us may feel, well, a lot of things about myself we need to change. Among all the different things that may need change in our own lives, according to Vedanta, the most basic thing is our attitude toward ourselves. In fact, how we see the world is directly related to how we see ourselves. And we see that oftentimes, that how, when you speak about the mood change, oftentimes it's related with what's going on inside. When we feel calm and peaceful and wonderful, automatically everything around seems like, oh, this is such a great place, such a great, wonderful thing. When we are disturbed, then you look out and the same thing appears to be a terrible place. We see in the lives of these great ones, when Ramakrishna, we see in his life that he was always so joyful. and he just saw the Divine Mother's glory and joy everywhere. Now, there were people, even in that Kali temple where he lived and worked, there were other people. Not everyone was as joyful and peaceful as he was, although they were living in the same place. So, is it the place that brought him peace and joy, or is there something different that had occurred within him? And what Vedanta says is that the greatest good we can do to ourselves and indirectly then to others is to have greater clarity about ourselves. Now, what do I mean by greater clarity? First of all, to know ourselves a little bit more clearly. I'm not even talking about some big spiritual realization. Just most of us don't even know ourselves clearly as human beings. We either have a very inflated image of ourselves. We always think of like we're just a repository of all excellent qualities, and it's everyone around us that's terrible. Or it's the other way. Or we can sometimes go to the other extreme and just see like, oh, I'm useless, or oh, terrible. Sometimes looking upon oneself as not good enough could also be a sign of egoism. It's like, I'm really good, but because I'm modest, I like to think of myself as not good enough. So you see, it's a very complicated picture, and various kinds of self-perceptions are possible. And as I've sometimes pointed out, we neither need to have a very superior opinion about ourselves, nor do we need to have an inferior opinion of ourselves. That, in other words, we don't have to be suffering either from a superiority complex or an inferiority complex. We just don't need to have any complexes at all. We just need to be just realistic. And that kind of a detached, neutral look at our own lives, if we can do it, it's not always easy. Sometimes we are better at judging other people than judging ourselves. Part of the difficulty also is the hold of the ego. Those people who are very egoistic find it very difficult to judge themselves. So there has to be a little bit of the loosening of the I sense when we have developed the capacity to kind of metaphorically step outside of ourselves and look upon ourselves as just one person among the many in this world. So just as we judge other people, if we can stand outside and say, now I pass comment on other people all the time. Now let me see what comments I can pass upon me as a person. And if we do it in as unbiased a way as possible, we will discover that we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. There are some things we are all good at. There are some things we are not good at. Now, when we have this realistic understanding of ourselves, then that is self-knowledge. Self-knowledge with a small s. It's not the highest self-knowledge, but this is the starting point. In order for us to even begin practicing an authentic spiritual life, we first need this benchmark is a correct self-knowledge of ourselves. That I, as a human being, these are the things, these are my strengths, these are my talents, and these are my weaknesses. And actually, if we have this, which appears very basic really, but not many of us have thought about it in this fashion, then life becomes actually very easy. All that we need to do is hold on to our strengths, see that we never lose them, preserve them, if possible, develop them further. And next, at least one by one, deal with the weaknesses. As some Vedanta teachers pointed out, that even if we are able to identify, say, some major weaknesses and decide that I'm going to eliminate one weakness per year, even then, very soon we will see that we are becoming better, we are evolving better, we are evolving more than simply this kind of a very hazy idea, oh, I'm becoming more spiritual, I'm meditating, I'm praying, and so perhaps I'm progressing. That doesn't help. We just have to kind of go to the brass tacks, so to speak, and really do this. Where this process will lead us ultimately is to take a deeper look at the self. Beginning with the human being with strengths and weaknesses, we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then we begin to ask, is there any deeper truth within me than simply this human being? This human personality that I have, this body, the mind, the ego, all of these things which are me or within me as I see it, is there anything more to it? And then we arrive at what the Gita calls as the Atma, the spirit, that there is an unchanging, free truth around which the body, mind, ego have grown. And you and I, every one of us, is that truth. That truth is always at rest. That truth is always free. The body and mind, both material, they are the ones which have to follow the laws of matter, which involve coming into being, transformation, and eventual destruction, which is what we call death. But the truth, that doesn't die. The truth doesn't have its ups and downs through joy and sorrow, pain, and so on. The truth always is. So what Krishna advises us to do is to get this clarity of vision by which we will know that we are that deepest truth. Once we know that, then the body and mind, which are still there, they have not disappeared anywhere, but from that vantage point of being that Atman, the spirit, we are then able to allow or permit our own body and mind to go about carrying out their duties and responsibilities. But because we are perched in that truth, the activities of the body and mind don't bind us anymore. They don't produce stress and anxiety anymore. We become free from all the hopes and fears which guide and control and manipulate our lives. That is what Krishna is saying here. The verse 39 was the last verse which we saw before we closed last time. Let me read it again. The person of faith, zeal, and self-control attains knowledge. Having attained knowledge, he immediately attains supreme peace. And we saw how all these three are related. First, we need faith, but the word is Shraddha. Shraddha means the word faith is kind of overused a little bit and therefore doesn't really convey the idea fully. I sometimes like to translate the word Shraddha as this is also not a good translation, but it's more like a gut feeling. When you say faith in God, it's not simply oh, God exists, I have faith. Not that. It's a kind of a gut feeling. I know there is a higher truth, or the spirit. Now, maybe we have not experienced the spirit yet, but deep down we have this. We don't have any proof. We have not had any experience, but deep down we know that there is some deeper truth within me. That is what I call faith. Now, when that faith is there, that faith leads to then zeal, or what in the commentary here is pointed as a one-pointed focus. Because if I have to now, for instance, if we have to practice work as worship, as Krishna said, why would we want to do it? The first thing, even though we have to accept these words on faith in the beginning until we have had experience, What is it that would make me even undertake this practice? So we need this somewhere deep down. I don't want to use the word conviction because it still sounds too intellectual. It's not it's not intellectual, but deep down you know this is true. If that feeling comes, then it gives me zeal. Then I said, then I must practice it. When I know I must practice it, there is zeal in me, then it also automatically leads to self-control. By self-control is meant, then for instance, it's time, for instance, meditation, as an example. Once you have faith that this is a practice that will lead to truth, then it gives you zeal. I must do it. Where does self-control come in? Self-control comes in because when my other natural tendencies, which would say, oh, today I don't feel like meditating. Today, let me go and watch World Cup soccer. Then, but a self-control would be no. Meditation is important. I need to do it. I'm willing to control my other tendencies to focus on this because I know this is important. That is how faith, zeal, and self-control are related. And that is what Krishna says in verse 39, they lead to knowledge. And once that knowledge comes, we immediately attain to supreme peace. Now what happens to someone who doesn't have these qualities? That is described in the verse that we will study now. That's verse number 40. Let's chant together. Ajñascha shraddadhanascha samshayatma vinashyati nayam lokosti na paro na sukham samshayatmanaha. He who is ignorant, wanting in faith, and of a doubting mind is ruined. For the doubting man, there is neither this nor the other world, nor happiness. So we saw how faith, zeal, and self-control will lead to knowledge. What if we don't have that faith? What will happen to such a person? And so three things are mentioned here. Ignorant, and wanting in faith, and a doubting mind. Again, these three are also related. Now, it's possible that some people may not even know, may not have had a chance to even hear about this truth. And you can't blame those who never even heard about it. So that is one possibility. In some sense, therefore, we should recognize that we are already blessed, that among the billions of people who are on this planet, we have at least come to know that there is a deeper truth in my heart. Believe me, not everybody has even heard about it. Most people are so busy with the living from day to day, just thinking about not beyond what's going to happen a week later, or maybe at the most of a year later, that very few people are even thinking about this deeper truth or spirit. So we are already fortunate that we have at least had an opportunity in life to hear that something like that exists. Now it's possible that for many people who sometimes get a chance to hear about it, may not understand it. Now, those amongst us who have heard about it and at least understand a little bit of it are a little bit more fortunate. Now, it's possible that we understand it, but somehow don't have that faith. By faith is meant wanting in faith means, yes, I heard about it, it makes sense intellectually, but who knows whether it's true. So something we understand, we get to hear about it, we understand it, but faith doesn't grow in the heart. We feel like, who knows, maybe this is a good idea, very logical, but who knows whether it's true. Now it's possible that we may hear about it, understand it, and somehow have that faith. Now I have a feeling that we are onto something, that there is this truth. Then there still could be a doubting mind. And one doubting mind would be, well, maybe it works, but how do I know whether it will work in my case? Maybe meditation helps people. Yeah, I can't doubt that it helps people. But what if it doesn't help me? What if I meditate for a long time and it doesn't work for me? So these kind of doubts, if we have, then we are in trouble. So that is what Krishna is pointing out. He who is ignorant, wanting in faith, and of a doubting mind is ruined. Now ruined is a pretty strong word. Vinashyati in Sanskrit. And the reason he gives, for the doubting person there is neither this nor the other world. In other words, it's not that a doubting person, it's only in spiritual life that these qualities are necessary. Actually, in any aspect of life, these are necessary. Even in secular matters, if we don't have faith, if you are ignorant, if we understand, don't have faith, and are always doubting, we won't be able to achieve anything even in our secular life. Speaking about faith, it's, for instance, if you have to go somewhere, you have to take the train or the bus or a fly, and you think like, well, who knows whether this pilot would be drunk, and what if my plane crashes? What if the plane is hijacked? Or what if there is an accident? I won't sit in a car. So if we continuously lack faith in these things, I know we don't normally see these things as faith, but life would be impossible without faith. That every step on the way, we live on faith. It's like you are sitting somewhere you've gone to a restaurant, and you have faith that the food that is brought in front of you is good. Well, if it's just slightly bad, at least it's okay. What if it's fatally bad? You have faith when you go to a doctor, when you have a surgery, you have faith that the surgeon, whoever is going to treat you, is going to make you good. Otherwise you say, I will not allow anybody to put me under anesthesia. God knows what they will do after that. Then no surgery is possible. So just a few examples really. They will sound silly, but what I just want to point out is faith is not simply something necessary in religious and spiritual life. In day-to-day life also, faith is very essential. So when we don't have that faith, even in our day-to-day life, and this doubting, constant doubt, you take up any project at your workplace, or you choose any career, or whatever you do, and at every moment is like, God knows whether it will work. Should I change it or should I not change it? And there are people who cannot make up their mind. And such people do suffer. They are not able to make headway even in their careers if there is always these kind of self-doubts are possible. And that is why Krishna says, for a doubting person, there is neither this nor the other world. Now that doesn't mean being so confident that we are totally reckless. So we always have to avoid the two extremes. And of course, it's obvious. So such a person, being happy is not possible either. Verse 41. The last two verses, 41 and 42, are really, in a compact way, they summarize the contents of both the chapters, chapter 3 and chapter 4. So verse 41, Yoga Sanyasta Karmanam Jnana Sanchinna Samshayam Atmavantam na karmani Nibaddhanti Dhananjaya. But he who has renounced the fruit of action through yoga, whose doubts have been destroyed by knowledge, and who is self-possessed, O Dhananjaya, Arjuna, is not bound by actions. So this is the kind of the quick summary of chapter 3 and 4. As students of the Gita who want to put these teachings into practice, the first thing we need to do is to purify our heart. And the way to purify our heart is through Karma Yoga, through doing work as worship. And that takes the form of renouncing the fruit of action through yoga. So the first step is examining our work, examining how we do our work, and making whatever modifications are necessary so that our work, instead of binding us, becomes a freeing force. And that is what really Karma Yoga means. So first step is Karma Yoga, because it leads to purification of heart. Once the heart is purified, and we always remember when we speak about purifying the heart, one quote that always comes to mind, which Vivekananda often quoted also, is what we find in the Bible. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So once purification of heart comes, then that clarity of vision comes. Through that clarity, whose doubts have been destroyed by knowledge. So that is when we become fit for knowledge. And knowledge of what? The knowledge that I'm not simply this psychophysical being born on some day and destined to die at some time in future. I'm not simply this mind which is vulnerable to the forces outside, which just has nothing better to do than just go back and forth between joy and sorrow all its life and experience pain and suffering. That I am more than all of these. I am beyond all of this. I am a truth which transcends my physical and mental identity at present. That knowledge will destroy all the doubts that I have about life, about myself, about the purpose of life. And that is when we become self-possessed. Right now, we don't have our self under control. Our self is being controlled by forces and factors outside of ourselves. So self-possessed means we then become, as they say, the creator of our own destiny. Isn't there some phrase like the master of my ship and the captain of my soul? Something like that. So we then have life under our control. Think about it this way. If you want a rather wild imagery about it, you are sitting in a car and along with your friends, and you are sitting at the back in the back, and 3 other friends, and all those 3 friends are drunk, and the one who is at the wheel is even more drunk than anybody, and your car is going, and you are the only sober person in that car. What would you do? You don't want to die, obviously. The others don't care because they don't even know where they are. So the first thing you need to do is somehow get these people out of the way and get hold of that wheel so that you have the car under your control. Then you will feel safe because you say, now if it still goes in a ditch, you are responsible because you are the one. But before that, you have no control over it. Imagine that this is a car and your friends are your body, mind, ego, all of them, and they are driving this helter-skelter. And now you realize you are the Atman. And you say, oh my God, now I do not have any control because these are the people. So, and in the periodic fasting that we do on Ekadashi days, etc., what does it mean? The body says, it's time for lunch. And I run and fix myself for lunch. I think I've done it freely. But really, it's my body saying, go, get it done. And so we are at the mercy of the demands that our body and mind makes upon us. That is what is meant by not having the car under your control. And so all of these, that's why again and again you'll find in the Gita, self-control means you get the car under your control. So first of all, right now in the beginning what has happened is we have, if you want to kind of still push that analogy a little further, right now we think we are the car. So first thing we have to do is, I'm not the car, I'm sitting in the car. And the others are not sane at all. They are insane. They've just gone berserk. So this is the first realization that we have. I'm not the car and these people. Now, first thing, don't waste your time trying to improve them. First, get hold of the wheel. Afterwards, you can do whatever you want. First, get hold of the wheel. That is what being self-possessed means. That is what Krishna is saying here. And when that happens, such a person is not bound by action. So karma. So when a person is at the wheel, when a person becomes enlightened, when someone's heart becomes pure and they know that they are the truth, they don't disappear. They'll still continue. They will continue to be on this planet. And that's how all the enlightened beings are. That is when Buddha attained knowledge, he didn't simply vaporize and go away. Buddha, Jesus, Ramakrishna, we just mentioned these very well-known names, but that doesn't mean there were only these 3 or 4 people who are enlightened. Every generation, there are people. The world is never without these enlightened beings. In fact, the presence of these enlightened beings kind of balances, keeps some amount of sanity alive in the world today. So these people are always there. Now, because they are there, they are doing actions. Now, they are doing 2 kinds of actions. One is called in Sanskrit they call it swabhavika, means natural action. It's like the enlightened person also goes to sleep, the enlightened person also eats, the enlightened person also may brush their teeth and so on. So these are kind of natural things everyone does. And an enlightened person also does things for the good of the world. So both these kind of action, both these are karma. Neither of these karma will bind the person. And for the rest of us who haven't yet gotten control of the wheel, every action is going to bind us further. And we have seen how the binding effect of action takes place. Now last verse, verse 42. Tasmad ajnana sambhutam ritstham jnana sinatmanaha Chitvainam samshayam yogam Atishto tishtha bharata. Therefore, O descendant of Bharata, destroying this doubt born of ignorance of the self and seated in the heart, and with the sword of knowledge, take to yoga and arise. So now finally, Krishna tells Arjuna that remove this doubt. This doubt is primarily the doubt about ignorance of the self. We know Arjuna had a doubt. Arjuna's doubt was, what shall I do? Shall I fight or not fight? Is it right for me to take up my sword and fight, or better not to fight? That was a doubt. Now Krishna has probed further, deeper into that doubt and pointed out that all the doubts, it's not that all of us have just one doubt in life. We have many kinds of doubts. What Krishna points out is that all of these doubts arise from one basic doubt, the doubt about ourselves. The ignorance about our own self is the root ignorance which produces all other kinds of ignorance. So this doubt born of ignorance of the self, and it's in the heart, it's completely one with our being, almost. Now that doubt has to be destroyed, and that can be destroyed through the sword of knowledge. Because we use the word destroyed, we need something powerful, and therefore the imagery of a sword is given. Take to yoga and arise. So what Krishna is telling Arjuna now, right now, what you need to do is practice Karma Yoga. You have come on the battlefield, do your duty. And the duty you do it in the spirit of Karma Yoga. If you do your duty as, oh, this is my duty and I'm doing it, which is good, but it's going to bind you. But if you do your duty in the spirit of Karma Yoga, it will not bind you, it will free you, it will bring you greater clarity, and it will make you a blessing to yourself and blessing to everyone around you. That is what Krishna is asking Arjuna, and through Arjuna, he is asking all of us to do. So we need to first purify our heart through examining the way we do our work. And the more our heart gets purified, the greater the clarity we will have. And with that clear vision, when we read again and again these verses of the Gita, more and deeper meaning will be revealed to us. That's the idea. Any questions, thoughts, ideas?
Oftentimes, the faith that diminishes, or some people who don't have as much faith or no faith, oftentimes it's based on experiences before a certain time. So, for the person who is, because of no faith, is not understanding and not feeling the zeal, what is that person should do?
Well, wait until faith comes. The truth is this. According to Vedanta, the seed of faith is in everyone's heart. Sometimes that seed can get buried deep underneath, and it has to get uncovered at some point. That is why in life we will see that nothing really happens until the right time comes. That's the reality. Sometimes it might appear to us. Sometimes let's say you come across a good book and you love it and you said, wow, if I'd only seen this book 15 years before, how wonderful it would be. And then you just feel like, oh my God, my 15 years ago, if I had known this, and 15 years are gone, time is wasted, and then you can keep on weeping and wailing. That doesn't bring those 15 years back anyway. But more importantly, you don't even know. Maybe if that book had come in your hand 15 years ago, you may not have been able to appreciate it the way you're able to appreciate it now. Assuming you were a different person 15 years ago. But if you say, well, I was 15 years ago, I was exactly how I am now, means nothing much has changed. I haven't evolved at all, which is not a good sign either. So sometimes it will happen that, in fact, many have told me over the last several years who have come to the Vedanta Society, that many of them actually were studying in BU as students. And some of them said that they used to pass by the center. They have often seen our notice board outside. They've seen this building, heard that there is some kind of a Vedanta temple, but they said, never really felt like going in there. And then years later, after they graduated, and then they found, and then they came and they loved the place, and then they sometimes have said, oh, if only when I was a student, I lived nearby here, and why didn't I come that time? And there's no, it doesn't really help, because maybe if I had come then, I wouldn't have been able to neither maybe understand or appreciate the way I'm able to appreciate it now. So I think that's about it. Faith is something that cannot be artificially generated. It's there, but it will come when the time comes. Therefore, in Vedanta, there is a statement, Kalena Atmani Vindati, means in due course the Atman will manifest itself. Now, which doesn't also mean that then, well, I don't need to do anything. When the time comes, it will happen. Because we don't do that in real life either, right? You say, well, I don't need to look for a job. When time comes, it will come. I don't need to go and fix myself a meal. When time comes, meal will come. No, we don't do that. We know that we go and do things, but things come when the right time comes. Yeah.
Swami, why did he say the path to purifying the heart is through karma yoga? Isn't there many ways to do that, or?
Sure. Yeah, well, suggest a few.
Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga.
Yeah, but you see, when we say Bhakti Yoga, what does that involve? Well, Bhakti Yoga would involve you are repeating God's name, chanting, you are singing. Isn't that work? Isn't that karma? You are doing all those things, right? So it's not like a watertight division. Oh, this is, if I'm singing and if I'm doing something out of love for God, then that is not karma. You can't say that. So when I do work as worship, it's not very easy to say whether that is karma yoga or bhakti yoga, because there is a worship involved there, right? So no matter what you do and what name you give it, it will be a kind of karma yoga, because you are doing it, and doing means action, and action means karma. Yeah. So we need to take a broader vision of karma yoga, not as simply this one aspect. Yeah.
So just following on the earlier questions about, you have faith in something, but something happens, like that analogy you gave about you have a faith on pilot, he's going to do right thing, but sometimes he doesn't do right thing. Then how to regain that faith?
Yeah, sometimes it may take time, and then maybe you discover that not every plane crashes, not every plane is hijacked. So, and then we recognize that, well, it was just I was in the wrong plane at the wrong time. That's one way. Because faith would mean that, oh, every pilot is drunk. Every time I go in a plane, it's going to crash. I mean, that people have such kind of what we might say rather unreasonable, obsessive fears about things. But I think if you look at it objectively, sure there are accidents, sure there are kidnappings, and theoretically there is a possibility that I may be in them. But what option do I have? I mean, what option does anyone have? For instance, we say, well, then I'm not going to sit in a car. I'm not going to sit in this. Well, I've got to be somewhere. If I'm existing, I have to be somewhere. And no one can be free from any danger, So then life would be impossible. That's why Krishna says, for such a person, he's neither here nor there. So, yeah, and it's actually it doesn't always have a very easy and quick fix solution to it, but we know sometimes from our own experience, sometimes from the experience of people that we know, how this constantly doubting nature can be very debilitating. It can weaken us a lot. Yeah.
So we need that faith comes first, then practice, and then result comes.
Say a little loud.
Faith comes first, and then based on faith we practice, and then result shows that. But in spiritual life, what I have difficulty is that when I have, even for instance cooking, I have a faith that I can cook, and then I cook, that's practice, and the result comes. But the spiritual life, because I'm a human being, I see God as a human being, and I'm looking for that God, different than us, like our providing, and God can do everything. And that God, even I practice in meditation, I don't see it. So that's the problem I have, that I see only God as a human being?
No, I don't think that's a problem. It is said that God will appear to us in the form that we want. And so one of course, the whole thing about truth about avatar is that because we like to see God in a human form, that's how we think, that's why periodically we see the descent of the divine in the human form. So, God is beyond all forms, but God can also take any form to suit the need of the devotee. That is why it is said once Krishna was going we read in the books, Krishna was going somewhere and there was Hanuman sitting on, and so someone told Krishna that Hanuman is blocking the way, and so someone told Krishna, now you better change your form to Rama, otherwise Hanuman is not going to get out of the way. And then we see that Krishna changed himself to Rama, and then Hanuman is there. So the truth, whether it appears as Rama or Krishna, is one. But because Hanuman was habituated to see that divine in the form of Rama, then Krishna took the form of Rama. And that is why Vedanta has no quarrel with people who are practicing and looking upon the divine in many different ways. Because whether we see God in, that's what our concluding prayer that we do every time. Whichever way we conceive of the divine, the way God is worshipped and seen in different traditions, ultimately it's the one divine truth. There is that verse which says, Akashat patitam toyam sagaram pratigacchati sarvadeva namaskaram keshavam pratigacchati, which means just like the rain which falls from the sky, ultimately it all goes into the ocean. So no matter which aspect of the divine you worship and meditate on, ultimately it all goes to that one divine being. That's the verse idea. Is that okay? Yeah. So we have come to the end of chapter 4. So when we meet next week, we will begin with chapter 5. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother again and again. We will study Saturday we have Guru Purnima celebration at 11 o'clock. As always, there will be prayer, meditation, music, a small worship of Sri Ramakrishna, and reflection on the role of Guru in spiritual life, followed by potluck lunch. So you are welcome for this program. And next Wednesday when we meet, we will begin with chapter 5. Conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving Being become manifest unto us. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May the Divine bless us all and fill our hearts with infinite grace and love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.